The essence of meditation is to find, to discover that transcendent dimension to who you are, the being of yourself. This transcendent dimension to who you are, the unconditioned being, is something that you do not need to bring about through arduous discipline, and you cannot generate it by being a good person. It comes before all that. It's already here. At that level, you are already complete, perfect, or to use this word, whole. On the personal level, the conditioned mental emotional entity, you are not whole. There's a lot still that you could do, and many things you cannot do. You can improve your life on the level of the person. Of course, it's a good thing to improve your life on that level. But if you miss the fundamental dimension of the transcendent, which is the spiritual dimension, then nothing on the level of your personal self will ever ultimately satisfy you, no matter what you achieve on that level. It doesn't mean that you should not strive and to achieve things. It's a good thing to try and achieve things as a human being, to learn new things, experience new things, to grow. That's beautiful. This is part of why you are here, but it's not enough. And in fact, it's frustrating ultimately and not satisfying if you miss the more fundamental task, the more fundamental human task, which is to awaken to the deeper dimension of who you are beyond the conditioned person. And that's the healing. That's the wholeness. You realize on that level, you are already whole. So you discover a dimension that has always been there, is not subject to time. Discover a dimension within yourself that is also the realm of the holy. Holy points to the fact that you are intrinsically connected to the source of all life, which traditionally is called God. You can only get a glimpse of what that means within yourself beyond conceptualization. When you go out into nature and you're in a state of pure awareness and you look at the totality of nature that surrounds you, no matter where you are, there are trees, or there's a landscape, or there's the ocean, or there's a mountain, or just a field, or even just a park, or even just one tree, then without labeling it, without analyzing it, without calling it anything, you give it your complete attention, and then you can sense that beyond that which you see in nature, see, hear, take in with your senses, there is a presence in nature that can only be described as holy. When you're in nature and you go, ah, and of course at that moment your mind stops. You're just conscious. You're not labeling what you perceive. And then you sense, but beyond the surface reality, there's a deeper reality, and you can sense this deeper reality, which ultimately, what is that? It's the universal consciousness that manifests itself through countless millions of life forms. But underneath it, there is the one, ultimately the one consciousness, the one being, and you can sense that when your mind is still. And then you can sense that there's not a separation anymore between you and nature. The same consciousness, different frequency, yes, is alive in you as the consciousness that manifests as a plant, a tree, a flower. That's the restoration of wholeness, the wholeness of life. When the fragmented entity, the ego, subsides and you become restored to the wholeness of who you are. This is what is needed for sanity to come back into human interactions. The only thing that can save the world is this shift in consciousness, this realization. It begins with you. And it begins here and now. It begins with a moment of no thought, but just pure presence or beingness. That's meditation. Meditation is thinking subsides, awareness remains. And when thinking subsides, the entire, what we could call the egoic self, the person, the personality, also subsides because it's created by the movement of thought. And something else arises. And there are many names that we could use to describe that something else that arises that is much deeper, much more fundamental than the person. The most neutral term you could use is the being of you. Jesus had certain words for it. Sometimes he called it the kingdom of heaven, which is a dimension of consciousness. It's not something you can see. It's here or it's there. He clearly said you can never say it's here or it's there because it's inseparable from who you are. Sometimes he called it other things. He also called it eternal life. My teaching is this: eternal life. What does that mean? It doesn't mean that the person goes on, and eternal means timeless, the timeless dimension of who you are. And then the Buddha came, and the Buddha refused all positive terminology like kingdom of heaven or the Atman or eternal life, because he knew that humans would fall into the trap of transforming any positive statement into a mental idol. So he refused to make any positive statements. He used only negative statements. He denies everything that is ultimately not it. So Buddha described it as the no self. And that's the ultimate teaching of the Buddha, is to discover within yourself the unreality, ultimate unreality of the person, the personal sense of the egoic sense of self, the self, which also Jesus said when he made the important statement, deny thyself. It doesn't mean that you try to say, oh, I don't exist, or that's not it. Deny means, as he uses it, recognize the unreality of the self that you thought you were. Recognize that ultimately that is not really who you are. This is just a surface phenomenon. You find that it also has its place. You have to live with it for a while. But the deeper dimension is that is not who you are.